Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series. Take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the one-shot adventure, The Orb of Goodbyes, designed by Marcos Lopez for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you are interested in a sponsored review, please reach out via email, Twitter, or Discord, or my submission form at roguewatson.com. And if you enjoy the content, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. This adventure, which is designed for level 4 parties, reminded me of a movie that is, I think, in the early 2000s, starring Jim Carrey, called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. A really cool kind of twist on the romantic comedy because it is got some cool sci-fi elements where, I guess I can spoil like a 20-year-old movie, but anyway, the concept is he's got this bad breakup and he goes to this organization who has the ability to delete those memories, but in order to do that, you kind of have to relive through those memories, and of course it's shown in the film that he's kind of hopping through all these past memories, and eventually, well, anyway, that's as relevant as you need to know, and he kind of regrets the decision halfway through. This doesn't try to do that movie, but it does take a concept from that movie. I don't know if the designer specifically took it from that movie, but which is building encounters based on a person's past memories. So in this case, this artifact has the power to, essentially is the same as that organization in the movie, which is to delete somebody's, remove or erase somebody's memories from a willing participant. So in other words, it's not used as a horrifying like a manipulation or mind, erase device or something. It's somebody who, again, from the movie, wants to get rid of a memory that they have. This artifact is located in a dungeon, however, the cave, and this cave kind of protects the artifact by using the most recently erased memories as encounters. So in other words, it's an excuse to have like a Yeti fight in the middle of like a cave dungeon. Like, it's a really cool idea. I would have loved to see this expanded even further to make it more moddable, maybe, and there are some notes in there at the end of the appendix on how to insert your own little tables of ideas and things you can use. And obviously, if your players have good bad memories you can use and rely on, like tragic backstories or something, you can definitely use those as well. Obviously, the designer doesn't know what those are, so it can't design those, but that would be a really cool thing to introduce and make this more relevant to your players. So I'm generally very positive on the idea here and also the adventure that surrounds it. It's a very tiny adventure. It's only like 12 pages long. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. There's no big twist. There's no big villain, for example. It's not like a cave full of goblins or something. But I really think that's a cool idea of having encounters built upon past memories. And the central memory is the one that the main NPCs are trying to forget, not because of a past tragedy, but because it's like tactical information. In this case, it is the locations of a Thayan wizard prisoner and his sentient amulet have been buried and hidden somewhere by these two figures who are the last ones of the soldiers of Waterdeep who have performed this task. And one of them has Anton basically retired to this town, became the mayor, and found this artifact and erased that memory, basically as a security feature, like just so nobody can scry his mind or something in order to find where this powerful evil stuff is buried. And he's ready to retire, and the only other person who is Brigitte, I'm not sure to pronounce her name, is basically looking to get the same treatment because she's going to take over the job, and he's offered, hey, we'll get you the orb and that will erase your memory as well, and it's worked out pretty well. So the party is hired, which there are some adventure hooks. It just kind of assumes the players are in this area. It takes place in the town of Laerton, which is apparently located around Amphail, somewhere around like the Waterdeep, Desseron Valley area, I believe. And there's different hooks about, why you might be connected to Waterdeep or why you might care about these people. But in any case, you're in this town, and you're hired by Anton to essentially go retrieve this orb because he sent some, townspeople, militia to go get it, and they never returned. Dun dun dun, which is a pretty typical adventure hook. So the party goes, and actually, first I want to make a note for the fact that the notes for these two NPCs, which I guess the one of them definitely can play a bigger role. Brigitte can actually accompany the players to the dungeon. The other one, Anton, only plays a role in that he's basically the quest giver, and yet we're given some really fantastic role-playing notes that are very evocative, and a lot of times I get role-playing notes on NPCs that are too long. It's like their entire backstory, and it takes like a whole page. And then other times I'll get ones that are really short, and it'll be like just a single sentence. And sometimes that single sentence can be fine if it's somebody that just shows up, has like one scene, and then they're gone. But with characters that are supposed to be, more important to the plot and more integral, it is nice to be able to get multiple paragraphs. And here, I really want, and this is the designer's first product, by the way, it says in the opening thing, I would really love for them to design a bigger adventure with more characters, because one of my favorite aspects of this entire adventure are how well written these NPCs are, not necessarily in their dialogue, but just in giving the DM the tools to run this character. I could say a whole paragraph. One of the paragraphs for Brigitte is she's very perceptive and chooses her words carefully. As she transitions from her soldier life to a role of leadership in a small town, she makes a conscious and sometimes awkward effort to be likable when meeting new acquaintances. Brigitte is just as likely to make small talk about the weather as she is to hold an uncomfortable silence. That's a very, very good role-playing note. You can really start to put all the pieces of this person together. And same thing for Anton. And we also get the personality flaws, ideals, bonds, if you just want to have that quick at a glance like D&D 5e building block for NPCs, but really, really well done on that. So the chapter 1 is just you're meeting the two NPCs and the town, and you're having this feast, and they basically tell you to get the quest to go retrieve the orb. And then chapter 2 is the actual dungeon crawl itself, which we do get maps for. Huzzah! Not only do we get a full color grid and gridless player and DM maps for the cave dungeon, but we also, because it's a unique situation where you enter each room and it basically turns into this other person's memory that you then have to complete, you end up with all these other maps, which I guess you could, if you're running a tabletop, you could just put that map out, or if you're running virtual tabletop, you could like supplant that on top of each area. We're given maps for all of those zones, and they are very different than what the cave is. So, for example, one of them is a forest with a kind of babbling brook. The other one is a like frozen cave, and then the third one is a City of the Dead mausoleum section. So they're all very different and very cool, and it's a really neat way of being able to use all these different tile sets and monsters and situations within the same context of you're just still going from room to room in this relatively simple cave, which is a great way to take a relatively simple cave dungeon and suddenly make it way more interesting and cool with this memory encounter thing. So the first thing you see are a bunch of names like scratched into a rock, which is a cool foreshadowing because these are the most recent people to have entered there and erased the mines, including Anton, which is the quest giver. And that comes up with the fact that you can put two and two together. I think only once do they actually, one of the memories mentions one of the other recent characters, but it does work out with the timing of the character. It's kind of a cool foreshadowing tool, basically. You'll also meet the militia, which, you always hope that you like that concept of, okay, is it a rescue mission or is it a survival thing where you find the bodies everywhere? In this case, that's one of the letdowns I had is they're just unconscious outside of the cave. They don't really know anything because the waters of the cave, it's part of the security system for this orb is even once you complete all the encounters, the waters wash you back out and you have to kind of hang on, or it'll actually lose memory of what you just encountered, and that's kind of how it keeps people out. And it's just they're basically all okay, they're just unconscious, and they kind of tell you what they can. They mentioned a weird thing about a fight with a goblin sorcerer that's not in here, so I was confused on whether that was, did the memories change, or were there goblins in here previously that just kind of missed where you're supposed to find them, or what? But that part doesn't end up basically mattering in the context of the story. So you enter, and once you get to A3 here on the map, you start seeing your first pool of water. And these memories are represented by these pools of water, which then explode into all of these various encounters. And when you make it to A4, that's got empty pools, and presumably we've already completed the one in A3 because they kind of have this interesting like bubble effect where you can't leave the video game visible walls until you complete it. Each one will fill up, and then the orb will appear, which is kind of the one like puzzle exploration thing you've got here, is that the players are clued into the fact they just have to complete all these different rooms, even though it's a little bit set up non-linearly. The first one is unfortunately kind of lame and the most disappointing. I like the other two memories, but the first one is a purely social encounter, which is totally fine. I think it's very appropriate for one of the encounters, one of the memories to be purely social. There's a lot of interesting things you could do that with memories that people want to erase, but this one is just kind of boring. It's a gnome who is getting ready to go off on a journey with a friend, and the friend just never shows up. She's just kind of, for whatever reason, just stands up this other friend, and that's the whole memory. Like, so the players can interact with her, they can, either make her run away or calm her down or do something. And if for some reason they act really mean and hostile, then a giant crocodile comes out of the water and attacks them, which really feels like the DM just saying, like, well, you didn't really complete this satisfyingly, so we're just going to throw a combat fight at you. I just thought there were way more interesting ideas. You can do that with social encounters. Steal from Eternal Sunshine and make it a breakup. Like, maybe the character's really upset because they're breaking up, or they wanted to forget this person, and then the players can deal with that from there. And maybe, if you want, because it's D&D, you could turn that into a fight, or maybe have it equal maybe some kind of psychic damage, or make maybe a trap thing, or you can still just make it a social encounter and make it so the players have to roll skill checks to be able to solve that event. But I just thought it could have been more interesting, rather than just the sad friend. Then we get to the other two memories. So, you can go to the main cavern and figure out, okay, these pools are slowly filling up. There is a weird side thing you can do where if you roll religion checks and figure out there's actually a shrine to whatever's supposed to be the god of Eldath, the god of peace. If you break weapons, which are available in A2, and throw them in the pool, that fills them up. I don't like that, because then you literally skip like the memories. So I thought that was kind of weird, because when you complete the memories, they actually fill up the waters as well. So I thought that was a bizarre way to do it. Maybe that could have you could have given people like advantage, or offered them like the bless spell or something. You can give them reward people for being able to, if they want to make the religion checks and do more of the exploration thing, then there's ways to do that, rather than just having, okay, you bypass parts of this adventure. A5 is the Yeti Encounter, which is a cool way of using this frozen cave map right here, where apparently somebody wanted to forget this very scary event where this Yeti, these two Yetis killed like half their party, and now they're tromping at you. And there's a cool bit where it's kind of a hazardous environment, because there are stalactites hanging from the ceiling, or icicles, I guess it says, and the Yetis, when they move around, they knock these things down, which can cause damage. That actually adds an interesting hazardous effect to the scenario. Otherwise, it's just a straight up combat fight, which, hey, also on board for that. And I think it's neat because suddenly you're in a cave and suddenly you're transported into this frozen area with two Yetis barreling down at you. And then the final memory, there's this also weird side room where there's these horses that are peppered by arrows. I guess this was supposed to be what the goblin encounter was. We don't see any trace of the goblins, just horses destroyed by arrows. So I was actually very confused about what was supposed to happen there. The third memory is, of course, the one that Anton erased, which is the location of the Thayan Wizard, where the actual tomb is, which is apparently manifested in the form of a flame skull. And you get to basically come across this memory as it's happening, with this cool scene of the Brigitte woman who is younger and is fighting like a pair of ghouls, and then Anton is not there, even though she's responding to him because it's his memory being erased. And instead there's a flame skull right there who's basically helping guard the tomb. So an interesting twist is the players, in trying to recover this orb, end up also learning the location that they're trying to erase. So that becomes an interesting security threat, that it just mentions, the designer says, hey, if they don't use the extra charges to then erase that memory, which it does come with 1d6 plus 1 charges, if there are charges left when she uses it, assuming you recover the orb, then they can erase the memory, or they cannot, and in which case that could, lead on to different adventures as, somebody comes trying to scry that information and realize that they're the ones with the location. So it's kind of the one interesting, I guess, twist to this adventure. Otherwise, they can complete this third memory in a number of different ways. They can help Brigitte defeat the ghouls, or defeat the flame skull, whatever else the DM decides in terms of trying to, quote-unquote, complete the memory. And then once it's completed, the third, assuming that's the third one, will fill up, all the waters will fill up, and they will coalesce and create this orb, but that also makes this giant flooding, climax, as the waters threaten to push everybody out of the cave. But I don't think it's supposed to be a case where they straight up, you can fail necessarily by having all the waters push you on, because that would be really unsatisfying. If we end up like the militia, basically, where you all fail, you get thrown out of there, and you lose control of the orb and you have to do everything again. Like, that's not a very satisfying way of doing it. So it doesn't quite make the notes about that. It just doesn't mention the fact that they literally necessarily lose you know, they have to do everything again. I think it just mentioned the floods will just push the orb out with the players, which also makes me confused about why didn't the orb end up with the militia then. So a little bit of strangeness there. The final chapter is just, you know, a pretty short epilogue where they can turn in the orb, they get the reward, and she will use the orb to, you know, erase her memories, but then of course the players may have those memories. So it's a really cool concept. I wish maybe the designer had done a little bit more with it, although I like that this is a one shot. It's supposed to be pretty small, so 3 memories is probably enough. Having more options for different memories that you could pick and choose maybe would have been really cool to have. You know, to fill in those 3 if you want your party to be all combat related, if you want to, if they're okay with more scary memories, or if you want to keep them more like social and tragic and drama memories, you could do that, or you could pick from, you know, a couple different ones. There's an appendix at the end that just mentions the fact that there could be more memory encounters, but they're not scripted like they were that we just explained. Instead, they're all just this D6 table where it's just there's an adult blue dragon attacking a small town, or you're caught by goblins left behind by your party. You know, instead of having those be more, you know, several paragraphs of how to run that encounter, they're just kind of encounter ideas. Still very cool to have, but it would have been awesome to have some that I could literally just pick and choose and slot in as I wanted to. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for the Orb of Goodbyes. Pro, encountering others' bad memories as encounters is a creative concept for a dungeon and a really, really neat idea. It reminded me a lot of that movie, but I think it's really creative. It's really original. I don't think I've ever seen a D&D adventure that used the concept of past memories. Obviously, it would be amazing to use your party members' own memories, but that's something the designer can't really plan for. So instead, they designed based on other NPCs, and in fact, that's important to the story because that's the whole idea. Is you're trying to erase this memory that you then come across, which is them, you know, fighting the very final remains of this evil wizard who's been buried in this certain location. So really cool concept for a relatively small, straightforward dungeon crawl. Pro, wonderful roleplay notes for the 2 primary NPCs. I thought that was extremely well written, and they didn't have to be. Like, they're not... Yeah, I guess Brigitte can accompany the players into the dungeon, but you didn't need all of these like really great notes and information about how to roleplay and who these people are. So I just thought that was a really cool plus. And of course, pro, full color grid and gridless battle maps for the cave and each memory, because each memory takes place on its own unique biome and environment and hazards and things. So that was also a really cool addition, especially for such a relatively small adventure, but one that does feature the dungeon crawl as its primary location. Maps are obviously hugely appreciated. My one con, I had a few, you know, cons here and there, but the one that really stuck with me is I wished, because we only had 3 memories, and I just thought the one social one was really kind of disappointing and lame ultimately. I don't mind the fact that one memory is purely socially a social encounter. I think that's a pretty good idea, especially because the dungeon itself doesn't have any social encounters built in. Yes, we could have some social encounters in the chapter 1, but I like the fact that there's a social encounter. I just thought that the actual like sad friend was really lame and didn't really offer any interesting drama or neat, you know, situations or anything to that effect. So that was my one con, is that unfortunately one of the 3 memories used is not very entertaining. Final verdict, by building interesting encounters through memories, the Orb of Goodbyes creates a unique one-shot adventure that's unforgettable. And thank you everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Thank you.